Hi everyone, this is Kylie from Stampers Workshop. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Australia. I recently shared a card on my blog featuring the Blessings of Home stamp set. It generated a ton of interest and people asked me to create a video showing exactly how I made the card. It's actually a really simple process. The longest time you'll spend on it is colouring the image, but if you like to colour, you'll find it to be a lot of fun like I did. Start by inking up the main floral image with Tuxedo Black Memento ink, and then repeatedly stamp this image all over a panel of basic white cardstock. Make sure that you do re-ink the stamp between each stamping, because once you stamp over the edge you'll end up with this line of ink on your stamp and you don't want that to be stamped onto your panel. Also, pay attention to the orientation of the image. The first time I made this card, I had lots of little blue flowers, or what will become little blue flowers, and this time I have one which I end up putting the sentiment over, so just pay attention to that too. Okay, we're going to start by colouring in the leaves. It doesn't really matter which way you start. This time I started with the leaves, and I start with a layer of light granny apple green. I flick out from the edge, and don't worry if it doesn't go to the edge. That white adds a little bit of extra highlight. I then come through and do the dark granny apple green over the lines where you can see that sort of shows where the darkness should be, where that shadow should be, and then finish it off with some more light granny apple green that sort of blends it together, but don't stress too much about that. Next up, you can see that beautiful pool party. I use light and dark pool party, but I've only got those small little flowers because of how I oriented the stamp. My previous card had lots of those little flowers and they just looked beautiful. I'm now moving on to the medium-sized flowers, which I've decided to use yellows. So I start off with dark saffron, and I do them on those lines. They kind of tell you where to add the darkness. So I just go a little way up, adding the dark saffron, and then I add a little bit more of the dark Daffodil Delight, and then sort of blend them out a little bit with the light Daffodil Delight, and then I go over the top with all of those colours with the light saffron, and that sort of blends it all together, but you still have that real richness to the colours. Now you might think, 4 colours? I don't want to use 4 colours. I don't always colour like this. You don't need to use all of those colours. It's just I started to do it and I thought, oh, I like this. The light saffron and dark saffron just didn't quite have that punch that I was looking for, and the Daffodil Delight gave it. So if you're looking at something and you think, oh, it doesn't quite have that kick I'm looking for, think about adding a different marker. It doesn't have to be the same one, like I've used Daffodil Delight, and that just might brighten it up. Or use a different color, you might add a little bit of brown to it. That could have looked really good as well. Just something that sort of just adds that little bit more interest. But don't worry if you don't do it. You can see by the granny apple green leaves, I've only used the 2 colors there. They still have plenty of kick. It just really depends. As you're coloring, you'll kind of go, oh, that looks great, or oh, that needs a little bit more. So just sort of be guided by what you're doing, and don't be afraid to experiment. And if you're not sure about the colors, practice before you move on to your main image. Now you can see I've done all of the yellows and I think they look really great. Now here's where I kind of took a bit of a leap. I wanted a pink flower, and I actually started colouring with the dark polished pink in all of those shadow areas and thought, yikes, this is very bright. I came in with the lighter pink and I thought, this is still not quite going in the direction that I thought it might, but I really liked them at the same time. So I kept going, just adding a little bit of the dark, then going over it with the lighter polished pink marker. Next, I took a dark FLIRTY Flamingo and sort of went over the 2. And because it's not quite the same shade, it just added a really interesting look, and I really like it. So I kind of went over those 2 colours that I'd already put down and put them in areas on its own as well to really give it dimension. And once I'd finished with that, I came in again with the light Flirty Flamingo and sort of coloured over it. And I didn't always colour to the edge either, because as I said to you earlier, if you leave a bit of white, that's kind of like a little bit of highlight as well. And all of that goes to give extra interest and dimension to the colour and you can to your colouring. And as you can see, it really pops off. Now here's the bit that got everybody intrigued. I coloured the black background. I used the dark basic black and then I went in all the little gaps between the floral image so it looked like I'd actually stamped on a black piece of cardstock. I had a lot of people who thought maybe I'd die cut it and stuck the flowers onto black cardstock, but all I did was colour. So if you like to colour, you can colour here. The first time I made the card, I actually coloured the black first. As you can see from this one, I did it last. It doesn't really matter. Just colour everywhere you want. If you go out of the lines too, no one will know because you've just coloured over it. So it's a really fun technique. And it really packs that wow factor, you know, because now those colours, which looked really pretty to start with, now really jump off the page, don't they? Oh, I love it. Of course, you don't have to use black. You could use other colours as well. I've done it before with a pool party background. You could do it with a nice navy background. That would look really great. So just have a play and experiment. It's fun. It looks great. It's easy. You can sit there and colour wherever you are. I did add some Wink of Stella. I tend to like to add Wink of Stella to the petals just to give it a bit more shimmer and shine. Right now I'm cutting it to size. I hang on to these pieces and I'll show you what I do with them later. I'm just chopping off 5mm on it on the two edges so that we have a little bit of the basic black cardstock base show through. I added the panel to the cardstock base with seal. You could pop it up if you wanted to with Stampin' Dimensionals. It just depends on what sort of look that you're going for. I just wanted to have a fairly flat card. Okay, pop that aside. Let's go on to doing the sentiment. Take a piece of basic black cardstock, and if you've still got your embossing buddy, use that because we're going to do some heat embossing. Ink up your stamp with VERSAMARK. And you'll see here that I messed up my stamping. I've had a line across the top. Now, in my particular case, it didn't matter because I knew I was going to trim it down. But if this happens to you, there's a couple of things you can do. Keep an eye on the stamp before you stamp, and you can wipe that edge so that there's nothing there. Now, if you happen to stamp it and apply your embossing powder before you realise what you've done, don't stress. Just don't heat emboss it until you've taken a clean paintbrush. Wipe off the excess embossing powder and then heat set it. You might end up with a bit of a watermark look, but you certainly won't have that long, in my case, long line of gold embossing powder. It's a really, having a paintbrush on hand is one of the best things that you can have, because whilst you can obviously paint with it, it's great for wiping away stray embossing powder or big lines of it like I would have had on that sentiment strip there. Okay, you could attach the sentiment in a strip like it was, but I wanted to cut them into little pieces because I wanted to sort of stack them down the page. So I've cut them into Have A as one strip, Perfect as the second strip, and Birthday as the third strip. And then I'm using Stampin' Dimensionals to pop them up. I was coming to the end of this sheet, so I just cut along the edge and cut them to size, and it's really handy just to have them there like that. Once I've finished with the popping up, I take a piece of gold trim from the Simply Elegant trim pack. That pack comes with gold and silver, so I'm just cutting a length of the gold to size, and you can see I'm sort of twisting my fingers over the thing, and I've just pulled out the core. Once I've done that, it's easier to separate the individual fibres, because I really like this look. I've been doing it a lot. Don't they look pretty? And the way I'm attaching it to the card base is with a glue dot. I love the glue dots because they kind of stick all of the fibres together, but it easily adheres to the card base as well. You don't need to double up with your adhesive. Now you saw that I sort of moved the piece up and down the card base. That's because I realised at this point I was going to cover over those beautiful pool party flowers, and I wish I had more of them showing on the card, but it just looked best down there, I thought, so that's where I went. I stuck them all down, and isn't that pretty? The final touch was to add some gilded gems. These are gorgeous gold gems, and they of course tied in with the gold of the embossing and those gold fibres as well, really perfectly. If you're not sure where to put the things like gems, just try and remember to do them in uneven numbers, and try and do them in like a visual triangle as well. It's sort of a little bit more pleasing to the eye, but do what works for you. Okay, all we need to do now is finish the inside of the card. Now, I don't ever make it too fancy because you've got to have room to write. You remember we cut off that little strip when we were cutting the panel to fit the card base, and I said don't get rid of it. All I do is just put a bead of glue down the side, and there you go. It's going to be really decorative. It ties in with what you've already done. It was so simple. I just cut off, I think it was about 1.5 centimetres, so that when we attach it to the inside of the card, you've got another black border around it. Use seal to adhere it. I tend to use a bit of adhesive. I like things to stay stuck. And there you go. And so you see what I mean? It sort of ties the inside with the outside, but you've still got plenty of room to write. And that's the card for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you need any more information or links to the supplies, you can find them in the description box below. Thanks for watching. Bye.